Hello, my name is Reverend Ken Kimiywe, the Deputy Bishop of Christ is the Answer Ministries, and I'm glad to host you on this, our subject that we have been looking at, that is the ideal Christian family. We began by, first of all, underscoring the fact that marriage is undergoing a lot of stress and strain. There are a lot of enemies that are bombarding marriage and wanting to compromise marriage. And we went on, secondly, to look at the fivefold reasons why God gave us marriage, so that we could be able to understand that it is not just our idea, it is God Himself who gave us this institution of marriage. And then thirdly, the other thing we were able to establish is the three-fold kind of formula, if you would, that God has given us in marriage. And number one, we said there is need for us to live in order to cleave. And we saw that there are certain things that as we get into marriage, we need to let go in order for us to get hold of our spouse in marriage. Now, today, I want us to move on to the next thing, and that is the cleaving, the holding, the coming together, the trying to synergize and be one unit in the marriage. Now, there are several reasons why sometimes we have a challenge in cleaving to one another. You know, as much as we have left and we want to cleave to our husband or to our wife, we find sometimes we are not able to have a very synchronized kind of a marriage relationship. Why? Allow me to share with you some reasons why this does not happen. Number one, I believe, is because of the fear of vulnerability. When we get into marriage, not many of us want to be naked to each other, want to be accountable to anybody. In Genesis chapter 2, and if you read verse 25, the Bible says that the two of them, Adam and Eve, were naked and they felt no shame of one another. Now, that aspect of nakedness talks about being vulnerable, where you know about me, I know about you. There are no hidden details about how we handle one another and how we live with one another as husband and wife. Now, in the absence of that, what happens is that we become curious, and what happens also is that we lack trust in one another. So, cleaving becomes a challenge when we are not vulnerable, when we are not open to each other, when we are not accountable to one another as a couple. Secondly, I want to believe the other reason that makes people not be able to cleave in the family is selfishness. You know, you come into marriage, but you still want to live your own life and do things your own way. Now, it doesn't happen in marriage. In marriage, you lose your independence and you become dependent on the other person. The story of I, me, and mine has to cease, and you have to bring in the picture of your spouse in your relationship. Any decision that you make, anything that you want to participate in as an individual, always bring in your spouse. Always have reference to your spouse. And that way, you will find that there will be a sense of belonging between the two of you, and the two of you will be able to grow together in whatever events and activities that you are doing in life. Other than the situation where you just make your own decisions, or one is pulling on the left, the other one is pulling on the right, and there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of conflict that is happening in the home because we do not want to be committed to one another. Thirdly, I want to believe the other reason that makes people not to cleave to one another is when sometimes we are not willing to share, willing to share. We want to keep to our own programs. We want to have our own money, We want to have our own places where we go to that are separate from one another. And I want to suggest to us that one of the ways we can cleave to each other is probably even having common friends. It's probably trying to find out places where we can go together. It's probably even helping one another to see how do we manage our finances? How can we bring our resources together? And so that aspect of sharing If it is not there, then we become competitors. Instead of complementing one another, we are competing to see who outwits the other, even including raising up children. You may want to be the one to be seen to be the better parent than the other, instead of working as a team, husband and wife, to be better parents to the children that God has blessed you with. And so you want to be very careful that when you come into marriage, be willing to share, be willing to open up, so that the other person can enter into your space as much as you enter into their space. Fourthly, I believe the other reason that makes us not to want to cleave to one another is when we do not plan together. And when we do not plan together what we want to do with our own lives, it is very possible we can have two different activities that are going on simultaneously. Some of them probably duplicating each other. Some of them probably requiring a lot of resources, and therefore we spread the little resources that we have thinly across the two projects. But when a family plans together, there is a way in which they give themselves to that particular one project and work towards its success. Where there is unity, people are stronger. Where there is concerted effort, we are able to accomplish much more than if we were trying to do it single-handedly. No wonder Ecclesiastes tells us that two of you are better than one because you have a good return for your labor. In other words, when we work together, when we put in effort in raising the children together, when we invest together, when we do certain things together, you'll find that our marriage becomes more meaningful and even more productive. Fifthly and lastly, I believe the other thing that makes us not come to the place where we are able to be cleaved and working as a team is simply the priorities that we make in life. You know, do you as a couple sit down and prioritize some of the things that you would want to do? I want to believe that both of you have got desires, you have got plans, you have got things that you want to engage in, but do you sit down to prioritize and see what will be necessary for now and probably what may be for the future? Again, that talks about a little bit of the planning that I talked about earlier, but I'm talking about prioritizing, because there are certain things that are very necessary to you as a husband and to you as a wife, but you may want to bring those things together and look at what then would we do first before the other. When do we do this and when do we do the other? And when we prioritize, as I said earlier on, you don't then compete with one another. You know that today it is this program and tomorrow it is the other, and therefore with time all the interests that both of you have will be catered for. And I believe when we do that, we will be able to cleave to one another. We will be able to have a unit, to have a team that is working alongside each other. And so you want to engage with us, whether on Twitter or on Instagram or on Facebook or even on YouTube, as we continue to discuss this subject of the ideal Christian marriage. Please join us in the next video as we wrap up this series on the ideal Christian family.